Thank you, thank you. Yo, yo, yo. Thanks for that intro. So yeah, I'm here to make an interesting argument because most of the things that you've heard, and this is all sound advice, is like animate pretty quick, you know. And I'm gonna do a quick gesture because this is what I feel like most animations are like in apps. They go, they even like make that sound. And to me, it's like they're stabbing stuff repeatedly, among other things. I mean, so anyway, what we're going to talk about is how I think that's too fast. I think it's not sustainable. I think it's really enjoyable, and I think we've come a long way, and performance and speed are super valuable, but we can do better, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So we're going to try to boost UX by adding time. CSS, I think, is our time management language. It's one of the ones, I mean, JavaScript has timeout and stuff, but I think CSS is the one that really helps us manage time. So let's talk about the problem. The problem is instant evolution. This doesn't exist in our world. You don't have a scenario where something just transforms from one thing to the next. That's just not how anything works. It happens all the time in digital experiences. And that's sort of what I want to do better. I feel like when we look at this, we start to feel anxiety. We're like, ooh, what's happening? I thought I knew what was going to happen here, and it keeps changing on me. And I'm like, it's unpredictable. And it's like creating this anxiety in me. It's creating also non-trust. Non-trust? That's not a word. It's anyway. So that's part of the problem. And I understand. I've built applications and interfaces like this before as well. I mean, it's pretty natural. This is like V1, right? You're like, sweet, it's rendering. But I want us to think a little deeper. So if you've done this and then animated and transitioned, I want to talk about the next layer that happens after that. Our quest, because I'm a nerd and I just love MMO. Anyway, so our quest is to compel a speed-addicted community to replace techniques that create anxiety with techniques that relieve anxiety. And it turns out it's really subtle. It's just like a few milliseconds. And so what I'm trying to convey today is something that I guess it's pace over speed. It's orchestration. When you use an application that's orchestrated and feels like they programmed the application to understand and seamlessly transition between spaces, I think we have more trust in those. We have more trust, which is something we've heard before, but I also think it lowers anxiety. The more apps that we use, we download them and they spin up and they stab everything all over the place. It's great, but I think we can do better. I think we can make something that we can use sustainably over time. It's a lot about sustainability in this talk today. So, right, we have pretty fast apps today. But they're about to get way faster because we got quantum on the horizon. That's like scary stuff. Like before I've even finished my sentence, the computer's like, the result is 2. And I'm like, I said 1 plus 2. Geez, that's fast. That's so fast, I don't even know what to do with it. And so what we're running into is like this interesting scenario where we were like, speed, 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 internet's slow, and your computer's slow. And now we're like, oh crap, everything's really fast. It's almost so fast, we get those experiences that are kind of janky feeling. So we have even more speed coming down the line, and I think we have even more of a responsibility to start thinking about time and start thinking about what are we going to do with all that speed. So for now, right, today, if we look at our phones and we're on conference Wi-Fi's superb, by the way, top notch. Anyway, sometimes you get on Wi-Fi, you're like, whoa, this is slow. You go to a new country, whoa, this is slow. You have moments of slowness, and I know that's the current, but I think we're heading towards a space that things are too fast. So what are we going to talk about today? First, we're going to talk about Earth UX. So what's user experience like on Earth? And then we're going to talk about 2019 fast apps, because that's the year we're in. And we're going to talk about 2019 snappy CSS, which is going to be a lot like what Stephanie talked about, right? These are modern, good strategies for optimistic interactions, nice speed, and just anything. It's just really nice. Then we'll talk about how to calm those down. What are strategies for calming down an interface that's feeling maybe a little too fast, a little too stabby, or it's creating anxiety in some ways? And then we'll end with tactics. I like separating strategy from tactics, because strategy is going to be all high level. It's going to be very designery kind of. And then the tactics will be straight CSS. And we'll just talk about what literally can you change in the lines of your CSS to change the pace. Okay, so Earth Life UX. Where you spend most of your day, right? I mean, unless you're super addicted to digital stuff, then you got a different problem. But okay, we spend most of our time on Earth. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because on Earth, we surround ourselves generally with things that relieve anxiety, right? Why would you want to surround yourself with things that create anxiety? That sounds like torture. So what we're going to do really quick to lead up to this sort of, this idea of anxiety and things that create or relieve it, is we're going to talk about things on Earth that do the same thing. On Earth, we have things that are sharp. You might even have some in your pocket. You definitely know what these are. Sharp things are pretty obvious what they are, right? And you keep a minimal amount of them around. They're still handy. Anyway, that's sharp things, right? Think about sharp stuff. It has a feeling to you. And so, yeah, each one of these that I'm going to say, I want you to just like think about a thing that represents that for you. Soft things, your bed, right? Things that you spend a lot of time in your bed because it's soft and cushy and it's plush. You don't spend a lot of time touching your knife. Maybe you do. I don't know. Some people do. Vikings, they definitely are sharpening their knives all the time. Physically heavy. You got physically heavy things in your house or in your apartment. You have things that, around you that are really heavy, but you also have things that are physically light. I don't know if you know where we're going with this yet, but we're going to get there. We have audibly sharp. So these are things that, gunshots are audibly sharp. You play video games that have audibly sharp music. There's a lot of things that enter your ear and they pierce, and that's okay because that was their purpose probably. I have a couple kids. They're pretty audibly sharp sometimes when they're happy and sad. Audibly soft. I could just take a breath right now and take the pace down by adding a few milliseconds between what I say. Things can be audibly soft. You can change the pace that fast. Sharp gaming, mentioned before, I'm a gamer. I love hack and slash. I think it's the most appropriate time for this, because I look like a dork when I, swipe and stuff, but video games, they make it look really cool. The sound matches, everything's very sharp, everything's super fast-paced. It's kind of what we want in that moment. But there's also soft gaming. Anyone played Gree? There's so many good games that really, really help you relieve anxiety. There's soft games. They're games that are paced. They're games that are musically oriented. These are things that will slow you down and calm you through art and audio and all of these things, again, that... So we're slightly transitioning to digital, talking about video games here, but one of the things video games are trying to do is emulate the stuff that you have, so emulate the UX that you have on Earth, and they bring it to a video game. So, okay, we got it, right? We have things in our life that are heavy and soft and blah, blah, blah. We have tangibly sharp and soft things, and we have audibly sharp and soft things. And why I like this dichotomy here is that my proposition is most of the things that you want or keep around you in your life to relieve anxiety aren't sharp or heavy. They have the qualities of things that are soft and light. And that's because our physical and our digital, it's kind of like really heady stuff. We'll get somewhere. But right, our physical and our digital are connected. Our body and our mind are connected. We kind of project into our applications. Like when we see a piece of, you've heard material called magic paper, Google material. It does kind of look like magic paper. They're doing their best to emulate things in real life. This is also Steve Jobs with skeuomorphism. He was doing his best to take your physical Earth UX and bring it to the digital world so the transition was more seamless. It makes a lot of sense. I'm sort of piggybacking on that same proposition, and I want us to think about the way that we are building our apps. What is the feeling of our application? So, fast apps in 2019, right? I just want to do karate. Oh, you can see my tab bar? Here, there we go, it's gone. Okay, this is pretty much the standard that we have for today, right? There's nothing wrong with this. But I do want you to think, as you watch this modal go up and down, what do you feel? Right? Is this creating or relieving anxiety for you? Nothing in the real world really behaves like that unless it's got like 20 rubber bands around it. Which is part of what I'm going to pitch today. Is like all of these modern techniques for using CSS with easing, and we're like, ooh, yeah, physics. I want it to go boy, yo, 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 yo. It's cool, but at the same time, it in our real world, anything that does this is probably hurting somebody, or could hurt somebody. Okay, anyway, speed standard. These are the words that we use to describe our experiences. These are the desirable attributes of a 2019 application. We're not wrong. I'm just going to try to help us change it a little bit. Snappy, instant, and elastic. These were great goals for the progression that we were on. But I think we're addicted to speed. I think we're addicted to speed in more than just in CSS land JavaScript land and web land. All these lands, we are just addicted to speed. It's like more speed. Every conference talk is like, yo, I'm going to help you get faster. And we're like, yeah! And then we get another one. It's like, I'm going to get you even faster than that. We're like, holy crap, oh yeah. And then we just keep going because of speed, 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 more speed. I'm even talking fast, talking about speed. Right? So I'd like to advocate for calm apps. I almost called them chill apps because I like the word chill. It's just a chill word, be chill. Anyway, I want to advocate for calm apps. And here's a slight example. This is just a difference of 500 milliseconds, half a second. Does that feel like it's stabbing? Is that going to hurt somebody? Maybe. There's a little less. It could crush somebody between the title and the thing. It's like, trash compactor. Not really, though, right? This is much softer. It's just a subtle change, and it really drastically changes the feeling. And this is just the animation, and we're going to go through other techniques on how to do this. These are the words I want to advocate that we build our apps. Plush, fluid, and soft. Similar to the things that we surround ourselves with, the things that are desirable. Like, look at our clothes. Like, who's wearing snappy, what were the words? Anyway, who's wearing clothes that are snappy and elastic? Oh, wait, actually, I got some of those. Anyway, underwear joke, I guess. That wasn't intentional. But plush, fluid, and soft, right? Most of the clothes we have and we go buy and blankets that we buy, these are soft things. These are things we want to surround our life with. I want to quickly talk about iOS versus Android. Yeah, I work for Google. I think iOS is much calmer than Android. When you launch an iOS application, that animation that blooms into your screen, there's something soft and plush about that. I think this is a delineation that we haven't quite articulated in a long time, or that we've articulated in other ways, but I think iOS is generally calmer than Android. And Android is probably faster because it needs to compete, and speed is something that Google pushes really heavy. And iOS is just doing their thing, and they're user testing more. Maybe, I don't know, I'm generalizing. But iOS, I feel, is just a little bit calmer. I even think they could be more calm, and we'll get there. So these are some of the words that we've thought about, and I want to talk about how those make me feel. So on the left, we have snappy, instant, and elastic. So these are the typical attributes that we like in our applications. And those, to me, are generally startling, direct, and lean. So I tried to use words here that weren't necessarily negative because I think snappy, instant, and elastic, these are still really good qualities. I think certain applications might not benefit from being calmer. I think some applications might even need to be faster. So, take some of this with a grain of salt. Again, I'm trying to expand your mind into thinking about your animations and your transitions and the way that your application or your web experience feels just a little bit deeper. And so, yeah, startling, direct, and lean. And that's because they're so fast and they're so unfamiliar to you. Nothing in your world right now operates that way. When you bought a ticket, it's not like it went right in your wallet. It just doesn't happen. Nothing in the real world operates in a startling, direct, lean way. I mean, sometimes. You can get robbed, I guess. Anyway, there's lots of exceptions, right? Anyway. But plush, fluid, and soft, I feel like those are gentle, orchestrated, and optional. And so orchestration is something that I feel helps you achieve gentle. And then optional is something I'm going to pitch in that animations should almost always be optional. So, okay, where do we go from here? We already know that we project our physical world into our digital world, and we want to lower anxiety with softness, lightness, and orchestration. How do we do that? With CSS. Welcome to CSS Camp 2019. Let's talk about CSS. Woo! Swipe you to the next slide. Okay. Hey. What's up? I feel like I should give you a really crazy punk rock I don't know, Green Day thing. Anyway, so okay, current state, snappy CSS. Una Kravitz, oh, my image. Oh, it fits. Okay, so Una ran a Twitter poll recently. Hopefully you all know who Una is. You should go follow her. She is radical. I used the full form of the word. Thanks. Anyway, okay, so poll. So which animation speed are you using? Everyone's like, dude, this is the one that we've all been told to use, between 0.26 seconds and 0.5 seconds. And they're not wrong. And some people use 1 second or more. And here's what's funny. I'm going to pitch that to you as the better way, with conditions, and I'll explain them. So duration, this is sort of, okay, again, we're still talking about snappy CSS in 2019. We have a duration that's pretty typical of 200 to 300 milliseconds, and that is almost, like if you repeatedly watch this, is this creating anxiety for you or taking it away? I feel like it creates anxiety. It's like the longer it plays, the more I'm like, anyway, okay, I guess it's not quite that bad. I knocked a mic. I don't think they need it. Okay. Easing. Typical easing strategies we have. We've got elastic easing, ease out, and cubic Bezier. Why do you keep looking up there? I have two screens right here. They're the same thing as that one. I think I just want to join y'all in this experience, even though I'm delivering it. That's weird. Okay, so easing. We have elastic, things that we want. We're like, it's encouraged to put rubber bands around things. I don't know why. I think it's because it was technically challenging before, and we just liked it because we could do it. We use ease out a lot, and here's a cubic Bezier that's really popular. I think that's Material's cubic Bezier suggestion for ease out, right? And again, if you look at that animation, creating or relieving anxiety for you. If you're using this app for 6 months or a year, what's over time the vibe that you get from this application? Another common CSS tip for 2019 is if you have a distance for your animation, if it's a short distance, make the duration even shorter. And if it's a long distance, extend the duration. This is a really healthy tip. All these tips that we're going over right now, they're great. You should listen to these tips. I'm going to tweak them in the next slide and talk about how we can sort of modify them. So distance, very meaningful in the way that you animate. And I think in that switch scenario, I'm not getting anxiety from that. I don't need that to be a slow transition, right? So distance does make a difference here, especially in context. So anyway. Oh, look, I had a slide about how this is good advice. But I want you to think deeper. Those were 2019 CSS suggestions. So the rest of the talk is going to be strategies and tactics for how do we take these learnings and observations about the desire for something that's more orchestrated and soft and transition it into something that is more calming. And I want to walk you through these steps. And these are some interesting parallels that I found. So I have a lot of design background, a lot of development background, and I like design. Design has almost been around longer, and they tend to have a little bit more focused ideals. And so what I tried to do, and what I noticed are some crossovers, and this is one. Designs need white space. I don't know if you've heard this before. It's a super good advice, but if you add more white space to your application, it can feel fancier. It can feel more upper class. If you go to a really high-end website, look at how much white space there is. Go to a different website that's not as high-end and watch them pack it all in. I think the same way that design needs white space, I think UX needs time. You're a human, and you come from Earth where things aren't generally packed and condensed into these little spots, and that you have to pick apart each one, maybe for your job, maybe, but not at your house. And so I think UX needs time, and time, in the same way that it needs white space. And so time can be represented, and we have passive versus active time. So this is like, if I'm seeing something, am I just waiting? Am I passively just experiencing time, or am I actively experiencing time? Am I walking somewhere while time is happening, or am I standing there waiting? Passive versus active. And time is value, and we'll talk about what I mean by that in just a moment. So passive versus active, here's a story. Story time, baggage claim UX. If you haven't heard this one, this is awesome. So it turns out a bunch of folks would get off their plane, and they'd go to the baggage claim, and they'd be passive. They stand there, the thing's not even turning. Finally, it starts to turn. Finally, one bag drops, and they're all just like steaming and boiling as they're passively watching something happen. Turns out the airport was like, whoa, we have a bunch of people complaining about how long it takes for the luggage to get to the baggage claim. How do we solve this? They tried a bunch of things. Do you know what worked the best? Parking the plane further from the baggage. Did my mic? Oh, I was saying, yeah, they parked it further, which meant that people had to walk more, which gave them more time to put the baggage there. And when they got there, the baggage was there. No one complained. This is a lesson that isn't just about Earth. This is a lesson about your application. You can add a time to something to make someone feel like time hasn't gone by. Stephanie talked about this a little bit in perceived performance. There's other strategies here. But here's an example. Passive, active. One will feel like something has happened faster when the reality is it hasn't. This is just a fun thing to think about. How can you leverage active versus passive time? Usually we build passive because it's easier, it's V1. But the more that we can strive and go to the next level, we should hit that active area. Time is money. Spend wisely. So what I mean here is that if your app is too fast, it can appear wrong or broken. If your app is too fast, it can appear cheap. Like there was no value in what just happened. I just created a whole presentation in one click. It took half a second. I'm not going to pay them. It was obviously easy. And too fast can appear unreal. Right? This is because our reality doesn't adapt that way. There is no instant evolution. So a couple more stories about how time and adding time can actually increase value. I built this, well, not I, it was a whole team of us. As an agency, we built a bunch of Windows 8 apps. One of them was for Intel. It's called Comic Director. And you basically could like make a meme, but chain your meme together and tell like a comic with memes. It's kind of cool. Called it Comic Director. And when you publish your set, right, we put it to a social network, and there's a whole feed that you could go see them. It was so fast when they published that people thought it didn't work, and then they didn't think that there was any value coming from the application. So we ended up doing something that's, I think, pretty common. You've seen this before, where we hit create or publish slide or whatever, and we said, oh, the little gnomes are hacking on your code. Anyway, we had all this like silly text that was 5 seconds. We put 5 seconds into our app. 5 seconds. That's a lot of time. And everyone thought it was a really hard task to publish that, and they really enjoyed it. We had people publishing more than they were before because it looked like it was hard to do. And they thought they were getting more value out of it. When things are instant, they can feel cheap. It's just reality of what we've experienced on Earth, and we're seeing it manifest here. Eye scanner, Microsoft, other companies have come out with eye scanners. Turns out they tested one. It was so fast, they didn't think it would work, or they didn't think it worked. So they'd be like picking up a device. They're like, oh, this reads my iris and unlocks. Pfft, it's already unlocked. I think it's broken. It didn't even see my eye. And you're like, it saw your eye. It didn't see my eye. My eye's not that easy to scan. And you're like, no, it's scanned. They're like, it didn't scan. Okay, let's add some time to this, right? Weird, adding time. Again, like as that quantum approaches, right? Getting an answer before your question is done feels like there was no value in the query. It's just weird. QR code scanners. This does this to me all the time. I don't know if you play Pokemon Go or if you've scanned a QR code, but like you'll hold up the scanner and you'll be like, okay, cool, it just loaded. It just found the key. That was like a millisecond. QR code scanners, you're amazing. You're so fast, I don't even think you work. But they do. And so we were talking about like, gnomes creating, the gnomes are building your house or whatever. So this is a fun way to do it. This is an animation from the Material team. Stephanie talked about this as well, where you can sort of create, you're instigating more time, but since you're distracting and you're providing feedback and validation to the user, 5-10 seconds can go by, you don't care, right? It's kind of fun. Look at that guy juggle shapes. How does he hold the X? I don't even know. Who cares, right? I'm distracted. Looks like something it's trying to build my account. Cool, this must be hard. Look at that guy juggle. Jeez, I can't juggle. Well, I can, but this is junior high. Right? They get text feedback. The feedback says, oh, no, something went wrong. It's soft text. There's something humanizing about the application, and they're being validated. The user feels like they're in control. I have a thing I like to think about, too, which is applications, often when they're done really well, feel like I'm interacting with a really nice salesperson. I'm like, when you walk up to a sales floor, you're like, I'd like to buy a shirt. They're like, oh, cool. What size are you? Let me walk you around here. And it's like this slow-paced experience where someone's really genuinely listening to me and I'm in control. I'm like, let's go look at those clothes. He's like, cool, let's go. I'm like, I just met you. You're really nice. It's cool when the application feels like it's responding to me, like I'm in control. And some of these techniques here, distraction, feedback, and validation are really the two that helps a user feel like I did a thing, and the application is responding to me, and it's telling me its state, and we can work together. Item number 2, designs need to guide, right? We get a design, it needs to make sure that it's guiding a user to do something. But UX needs to follow. And this comes back to what I was just saying about control. And for me, if I'm not in control of my application, I start to get anxious about it. It creates anxiety for me. I'm like, I thought I just hit publish, and then the button and the thing froze, and I don't, and you start to get really frustrated if the user experience isn't following you. If it's in control, and I'm actually just a passenger on this application ride, I don't enjoy that as much. That creates some anxiety for me. I got this app, it's digital, I'm supposed to tell it what to do, and it's saying, close the app and reopen. I'm like, dude, you don't tell me what to do, app. I used to do this to my Windows machine all the time back in the day. You'd be like, don't tell me what to do. I'm in command. I actually, at one point, put a sticker over my enter key. It said obey. Because I was like, obey. I was like, I'm telling you what to do. I said enter. Okay, so time-based feedback. So how do we have UX follow? We do that with time-based feedback, and we can do that with interruptible interactions. How fun is that to say? So here's a good example of how you can add time to increase a user experience moment, and this is tap and hold. I love tap and hold. I also play a lot of video games, and I love it when they make me hover the little cursor, and then I have to hold it, and the rotation goes around. I like that because here, deliberation required. I like that. I like that I didn't accidentally submit something because I just grazed over it and barely clicked it. I had to be deliberate. And the application was like, you're deliberate, and cool, I'll execute that. That's really nice. Time is a required input for that action to fire. That brings me confidence. I feel in control while the interface is providing feedback and telling me, I see what you're doing, we're about to do it, do you want to do it? Do it, great, okay. And in this whole thing, we've added less than 1 second, but we've created this new sense of interaction, this richness about I'm in control, it's following, and now I can be more deliberate in my interactions because of it. So we added a little bit of friction, but we get the trade-off of confidence and people perceiving the application as something there to help them. Microseconds adding value. That's just fun to say. Microseconds adding value. I'm going to go sell you some microseconds. 5 microseconds for $100. Interruptible interactions. Enhanced without degradation. How did I come up with these subtitles? It's crazy. Interruptible interactions. Okay, so why do we want interruptible interactions? Because since we slowed down, I guess I'll read this, but since we slowed down the animation speed, a power user might feel frustrated because they're prepared for the next thing, but the application is still transitioning. Let the power user power through. So some folks on iOS will just turn off animations entirely because they're faster than the animation, and they just want to do their thing, and you should make it so that the animations can get out of the way. Time is really valuable, and this is just something we can talk about later. Time has a spectrum where I think in the beginning you want more time in the app. This is just also unrealistic if you were to build an application like this, but imagine you built an app that the first time you loaded it, every icon had a label, and every animation was like half a second to a full second. You would see something slide in much more gently and slower, but what if over time the labels disappeared, the animations got a little bit faster, and eventually disappeared? All the teaching and the guidance that came from the animation can be removed because you've obviously experienced it long enough to not need that support anymore. You can evolve into the next phase of using the application. So anyway, I don't think that's very viable to sort of build these multi-layered experiences in your application, but I think it's really important that the animations are interruptible. Whether you turn them off at the operating system, whether or not they're, here, I think this next one, whether or not they're gestures that are literally interruptible, or if you're using CSS transitions, because those are interruptible by default. You can set a new position on something that's transitioning over here to over here, and it'll go, okay. The transition code doesn't know, it doesn't care. It interpolates from one to the next over the duration that you supplied. That's really nice to a power user. They're in control. They're calmed by that control, right? When you are the one driving, that's the experience that you wanted with an application. You didn't want to be a passenger seat where you're like, I guess he's going to turn left again. Oh, wait. Okay, well, now I'll tell him where I want to go. That's kind of annoying. So time and animation should be interruptible. Designs need to speak, and UX needs to listen. We heard Jason speak about typography, and why that's relevant to speaking here is because the type on your page has a voice. This is kind of like typography 101, is that the characters have a personality. And if you want your application to feel softer, to feel calmer, then don't use a sharp typeface. A sharp typeface. So UX needs to listen. Design is speaking. UX, again, needs to listen. The driver isn't your code. The user is the driver. Your code is a listener. And we can do that through copy, typography, and audibly. So with copy, I'm not a very good copywriter, so we're about to look at an example. That's not great. It's not terrible. You can find a UX writer if you can. I think writing in applications is much more important than we think it is. If you have a writer in-house, would you high-five that person? That job is way more critical than you think it is. I feel like Google has this really luxurious thing that they have hundreds of UX writers. You can call upon someone and be like, I've got this UI thing that has this weird state. I don't know how to tell the user what's going on there. And they'll be like, OK, I'll spend 6 hours on it. And you're like, 6 hours? Wow, geez, that's an intense job. And it turns out it makes a lot of sense. That moment where you're reading that sentence can either create anxiety or relieve it. When you open an application and it goes, error 404, you're like, that's rude. Don't you know any more details than that? It's like a blunt person walking up and be like, you're short $5. You're like, couldn't you just be like, hey, do you have $5 more? There's like a soft way to talk to me, and there's a sharp way to talk to me. So here's a good example. You must register before you can vote. You're like, wow, that's firm. Okay. Or you can just register to vote. Sounds a little bit more optional, a little more candid, off the cuff. That's nice. I think it's just subtleties in this, like in your copy. You can change the way your application feels. So here's something fun and funny and stupid, and you can laugh if you want, or you can just sit and enjoy the moment. My wife uses this yoga app. It is so good at chilling out the moment. I did an impression of it. Here you go.
I love being in my body. I am centered and grounded. I am at peace with the material world in which I live. I am able to let go of fear and know I am eternally safe.
That was so much fun to do in my office. I was like, I am eternally grateful. Anyway, right? It was really fun. But at the same time, whoa, I hit play and we're like, this is going to be silly. 5 seconds later, we're like, zone in, or the mood comes down. It's that easy to change. I kind of don't have I have a nice personality. I wouldn't call it soft. I'm pretty high energy. Anyway, so that was fun for me to do. Like literally the voice in your application can be soft. That's sort of the fun side of this. Voice assistants. I am certain that so much work went into making those assistants not sound blunt that we have no idea. Because when we talk to them, they sound robotic, but they're not rude. And it's not just because they're saying please and thank you, or in my case, I have Google Home call me sire. Yes, sire. I'm like, yeah, you know it. Those feel soft and fluid. That took a lot of work. So don't underestimate how just the voice in your copy, or literally the voice in your application, or the typography can change the way your application feels. UX, so we have design needs to report. So this is, inputs have come in, user, and then we're going to make a design that shows you the results. And UX needs to respond. So design has decided, how do we display this? And UX is sitting there listening for the next moment. UX needs to respond. So here's a fun animation. Also, this is respond, animate, idle, load. Anyone know the rail model proposed by Googlers about 3 or 4 years ago? I see one hand. Cool. This is actually a really sweet model, I feel. It's they've pitched it as sort of a calculatable way to make, and a nice schema for making responsive applications that feel tangible and responsive. But the idea here is respond immediately to user input. That should be the first thing you do. Nothing. Don't shoot JavaScript. Don't call events. Just respond to the input. Show the button state drop. Show something that their touch, their interaction is received. That's one of the most important things at first. Because if they touch and nothing happens, instantly think it's broken. Right? You're just like, oh, crap. I'll spam it. Maybe it'll work. Respond immediately with something. Then animate. During that animation, where it's idle, you can go load. And they have it, so you can go look up the Rail model, R-A-I-L. They go into more depth about it. But what I liked about these animations is, like the keypad here, instant feedback, instant animation, idle time, and then they load and show you the result. It's not an accident why these feel nice. And I've highlighted the word idle here because idle in applications, we don't really think about it very often. And it's even like one word in this little set. We spend a lot of time in idle state. And I want us to think about what we're doing with that idle state. So here's some good examples of how you can do instant feedback. And this is a material example of how many different states they're managing on a switch in order to provide the right feedback given the context. Like, look, we have disabled on, hover on, disabled off, disable hovered off, disabled focus, blah, blah, blah. There's like 20 states. But this is also that when the user initially it provides some input onto that thing, that the UI has an answer, because that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to answer, and I'm commanding it, and it knows. I'm not giving it some new scenario it's not prepared for. That gives me confidence. It calms me down when an application has these states prepared and done. So then there's also things you have like big feedback, where the feedback is like globally applied to the page. This isn't just nice animation. Well, I mean, it is, but it's the amount of feedback we're getting back from our interaction that really calms us and gives us confidence that this application is so prepared for me to check boxes, it's changing the whole UI. Almost everything about this interface is pivoting on whether or not I've made a selection or not. That gives me confidence the application is responding to me. These are other fun ones here. So we have like response where I'm tapping and I'm swiping. We get respond and animate, instant validation, and idle. We spend a lot of time in idle, right? We spend a lot of time looking at spinners. I hate spinners. I mean, I like them. There's some cool ones. I really liked the Xbox one that had like the 3 little pieces, and you're like, are they ever going to connect? Right? You've seen spinners, you're like, are they gonna, I don't know, are they going to touch? I don't know. And so you kind of get lost watching them, but then they get really, really old. I know you have some spinners that you hate, the beach ball. Anyway, I'm sure that'd be fun. Let's just talk about all the spinners we hate. Oh, right, resonated. So kinds of spinners that we have determinate spinners, and we have indeterminate spinners. Determinate means we know when it's going to end, or we have a decent idea about it, and there's different ways to show those. We have circular determinate spinners, and we have linear ones like we see here on the left. We also have indeterminate spinners. These are things where we're like, stuff's happening. This is almost like the salesman. You're like, I need that shoe in a 10.5. He's like, cool, right back. I don't know how long it's going to take me to find that, 10.5. I can't tell you 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 30 seconds. I'm just going to get it, okay? Trust me. Here's my indicator. It's like, here, hold on to this buzzer. I'll buzz when I'm ready. You're like, all right. Determinate and indeterminate. These are good to use in different contexts because these do provide meaningful feedback. Oh, where's my timer countdown? I don't know. Oh, snap. Okay. Well, we're going to have to go through tactics really quick. So we have immediate feedback. I'll send out a link to all these slides because I think the gist of what I've said is here. We've got intermediate feedback. We have CSS that lets us show those instant feedback items. We have show the system state. So these are ways to, like, alternative ways to show spinners. Communicate early and often, as if you were a salesperson. Another nice little example. Animation directionality, so things come in and come out, should have different directions. There's a lot of things that Stephanie shared. Here's some good CSS for that. This is CSS that shows you the difference between a 200 millisecond animation and a 500 millisecond one. That's really subtle, and I'm telling you, just a little bit more time can add a lot of change into the way that something feels. Having interruptible motion, so here's some interruptible transitions. Things to don't do. See how this one kind of ends with a little bit of jank? It's not actually listening to the user. This one is. This is directly tied to my fingers, and that makes me happy. It makes me feel calm. This is a really bad image about sort of a strategy for only putting only doing animations if somebody hasn't specified the reduced motion setting. So it's saying never animate unless someone said explicitly, I'm cool with animations. And I like that. It's kind of like mobile first. You're saying, I'm going to not animate first. I'm only going to animate if. Increased duration. Calm down inertia, so all that elastic, try to calm it down. Here's 200 milliseconds versus 350. I think that's really interesting. We have 115 milliseconds versus 550. right? It's just a little bit of time, and man, does one feel like it's stabbing me, and one feels like it's just floating. I love it. Don't do things like this that are all janky and sharp. And how many rubber bands are on that? I don't know. Do this. I think that's really nice. Direction and durations, this is sort of thing. I think duration and distance are related. Wow, I'm really going to have to send you guys my links. I'm sorry, I underestimated how much time I would talk about the beginning stuff. This is a medium speed animation. This is a short speed animation. We're almost done. Long animation, so this is taking more time. Orchestration, I think this is the most important part. When I was talking about how I'm going to pitch you 1 second, it all comes down to orchestration. You can do 5 animations, you delay them and stagger them just a little bit, so the total animation can take 1.5 seconds, but the user doesn't perceive it that way. They can perceive it as half a second, because you staggered things, and you eventually came to a conclusion that showed a focus, and I'll demonstrate that here in a second. So don't orchestrate like this, where everything transitioned at the same weird easing, it's just sort of all funky. Do something more like this. Where you're drawing focus, the last thing to animate is the thing that the users need to interact with or that you want to draw focus to. Stagger with intent, because staggering can help time feel faster. There's like 1.5 seconds happening here. It doesn't feel that long. And I think this is the last slide. So this is one I really want us to look at. We're going to outgo at a high velocity. Things are going to come in at an equal velocity, but die down. And the things that are persisting, the things that are lasting the whole animation, are the things that are staying in context, and the things you want to draw focus to so that the user can get there. I don't know how much time I have, but we got to wrap up. Strategies. Here's a recap of the strategies. White space and time. Designs need to guide. UX needs to follow. Designs need to speak. Blah, blah, blah. I'll just give you these slides. They're online. Right, sorry, they're over there. No, they're being really nice, actually. Anyway, tactics. We talked about things like provide UI feedback. You should come in faster than you go out. Be interruptible. Be optional. Increase duration and strengthen easing. We didn't really talk about that. When you make something longer, you can make a 1/2 second animation feel shorter with a nice, stronger easing. So it'll start a little slower, go faster, and then slow down at the end. Subtleties in the animation, so it takes more time, but the user doesn't actually perceive it that way. And finally, orchestrate there. Assertions. So these are things that I believe in. Well-orchestrated slow apps can earn trust. Slow paces produce less anxiety. Apps feel tense. I think you should release tension from your application. UIs waste lots of user time. Instant completion feels cheap. Try to model app UI after sustainable Earth UI. Slow down the UI around you just to see what happens. Is it really that annoying? I don't think so. I think you'll like it. So contribute to sustainable UX by making optional and interruptible motion, increase your duration, stagger more, soften your tone, and release tension. This is pretty much my message for today. Thank you so much.